Hi everyone, this is Ekaterina, and today I'll be sharing with you yet another book as a part of my mindful reading playlist. And today we'll be talking about Becoming a Person by Carl Rogers. Now, I have mentioned Carl Rogers before and his person-centered therapy as a part of my level 2 certificate studies recordings. It was in week 11 that I went into much more in depth about his therapy models and who exactly it would benefit. However, as I said, it's not so much of a book, but are notes from the two lectures. So in a way, you would say that this is almost like a documented TED Talk. And to be fair, I really do regret that unfortunately Carl Rogers is no longer with us, and that I will never have an opportunity to meet him face to face or actually be present in one of his lectures. And even though there's plenty of recordings available on YouTube and other platforms with his lectures, with his consultations, however, as I said, I certainly will not be able to see him live. And when I read those lecture notes, this is something that another student in my class have allowed me to borrow. It certainly felt as if I was actually there listening to him speaking. It's a very well documented two lectures. And I would also like to add that this is aimed at any audience. So you don't have to be particularly interested in counseling or doing the study program I'm doing to read this. It's quite easy to comprehend, and I would certainly recommend it to anyone who is interested in discovering themselves, in understanding their true feelings, and perhaps would like to try the person-centered approach. So one of the things I liked about those lectures is that it once again reminded me just how humble Carl Rogers was. Because even though we know how much he's done in the counseling field and more specifically creating his person-centered approach, when you listen or when you read those lectures, you realize that he still questions whether his skills, his experience, all the things he's learned through years of practicing is still sufficient to truly help the troubled individuals. And I do find it amazing that somebody as experienced as Carl Rogers is still realizing that he is not perfect, and at the same time reminding us that the true power of change lies within ourselves, and it's only us that can actually find what is the best solution for our problems and how we want to lead a happier life. So that's something he starts his lecture with. And then he progresses into talking about the three core conditions of the person-centered therapy. So as a just reminder for viewers who haven't seen my previous video on this therapy model, the therapists need to display three core conditions. One of them is that they need to be genuine. So when they're seeing their clients, it's really important that they still stay truthful to their own feelings. They cannot pretend to be somebody else just because of a particular client in front of them. And unless they can bring the reality in this counseling relationship, the client will never be able to discover the true real self. The second condition in his model is all about accepting our clients for how they are. So this is called unconditional regard. And again, for some clients, it's truly important to have that safe space where they feel like they're truly liked, regardless of what they say, how they feel, what they've done in the past. And only then they can really focus on working on their self-development. And finally, the acceptance is not sufficient unless the counselor truly tries to understand the client. So it's all about empathy, about trying to put ourselves in the shoes of the client to truly understand their feelings, their concerns, and what sort of troubles they're facing. And only when all those three conditions are met, the counselor or the therapist can provide a truly powerful relationship to the client and support them in their journey of self-discovery. In his lecture, Carl Rogers also shares with us some of the characteristics that he observed in people who were introduced or had those sort of powerful relationships, whether they had them with their therapists, counselors, or whether they already had it with their friends, with their colleagues, or within their family. So those people were generally more confident, they were more self-reliant, and they knew that they were already the people they wanted to be. They were much more adaptive to the ever-changing situations and less defensive. They were not afraid to express themselves and be unique. They also were less frustrated with stress and recovered from stress more quickly. Now, if you think about all those characteristics, then certainly imagine that everyone had that sort of relationship with their parents or their children. If teachers could have the same link established with their pupils, if we can have those sort of links and that sort of support from our colleagues at work, well, from my side, I would definitely imagine that this world would be a happier place to be. And I also enjoyed from this lecture notes is that Carl Rogers shares some real examples of the counseling sessions he had with some of the clients and some general remarks he've learned over all those years he was practicing therapy. So one of the things he remarked is the fact that when people come to the counseling for the first time and they voice out the problem, if they're able to formalize, well, what exactly is their problem, then as the session progresses, generally they realize that the problem they were worried about is actually something completely different, and they see other sides or other things that kind of been hidden underneath for perhaps even centuries. Another remark that Carl Rogers shares with us is that while some clients are already prepared during the very first sessions to share the fact that they might be sometimes carrying masks or playing the roles of somebody else just to fit into the society, but some people are completely oblivious to the fact that they are actually being somebody they are not truly are. However, nonetheless, as they're going through this experience of counseling, they start to uncover more and more masks and sometimes even the roles they never realized they were playing. But certainly as the time progresses, even though this process can be quite painful at times, it can be scary, but it does lead the person to discover the true self, who they truly are, what they truly want, and how exactly they would like to lead their life forward. And even though there's obviously always possibility to just explain to the person who they are and give them step-by-step process of what they could do to change their life for the better, however, those changes are generally not permanent and people do tend to slide back into the familiar habits. And this is why the person-centered approach by Carl Rogers is so powerful, is because we're giving the opportunity for the person to discover their own sort of roles they've been playing, the issues they had, and as they learn that themselves, they learn how to change their behavior, and this change is much more longer lasting. So lastly, I just wanted to also share some of the remarks that Carl Rogers mentions with regards to, well, what happens at the end of this process when people truly discover themselves. And again, he talks about how people become more open to new experiences, how they learn to trust their own organism, their own feelings. But I would say the most powerful learning that I definitely tried upon myself as well is the understanding and willingness to accept that we are a process and not a product. And by this I mean that when we start counseling, and I've certainly done this before, I don't want to talk on behalf of many people, but I think many of us can agree that when you go and maybe start your therapy to begin with, you generally have a specific goal in your mind. You want to reach a particular target. You want to be happier. You want to no longer grieve about something that happened in the past. So generally we do have that set idea of what we want to achieve. However, as you're going through the counseling, what you will learn is that there's lots of other things you have to untangle, lots of memories and other emotions. And towards the end of this process, you'll start to understand that there's actually no specific target you can reach, because the moment you achieve something, you discover that there's other areas you can improve, there's other things you can involve in, and that's why it becomes a process. And also with time it becomes easier to accept that fact that there is no longer going to be that finish line and that you will be just continually changing and improving. And I would say, as somebody who likes the tick boxes and getting my things done and off the table, initially I found it quite difficult to face this reality, but now I feel quite comfortable saying that, well, this is the reason I'm doing this course. I want to change, I want to learn new things, and that's why I've accepted the fact that my life is simply a process of becoming a person. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. As always, please remember to leave your comments, like the videos, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Next time I will be covering a book on minimalistic living and how this approach can be used in other areas of life and not just decluttering your house. So look forward to it. But for now, take good care of yourself and find some time for mindful reading. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.